Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Yeah, we are really excited to get into this one.
I am so ready. So today we are taking a massive deep dive into our source material to look at São Miguel and the Azores. We're going to break down every single thing you need to know for 2026.
Exactly.
We are talking flight costs, the new tourist taxes, weather traps, the local food scene, and the exact daily budgets you need. And then we'll give our final verdict on whether it's actually worth your money.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. So to start, I want you to just close your eyes and picture this. You have been flying for hours over the empty, deep blue expanse of the Atlantic Ocean.
Right, just water everywhere.
Literally nothing but water in every direction. And then suddenly, breaking the horizon, this massive, sheer green volcanic mass just rises straight out of the depths.
It's quite a visual.
It really is. And as you descend toward João Paulo II Airport, the landing gear drops. And the moment those cabin doors open on the tarmac, it physically hits you. The smell.
Oh, the smell is iconic.
Right. It is this incredibly specific, dense mix of heavy salt spray, rich, wet vegetation, and just this faint, sharp mineral note of volcanic sulfur lingering in the air.
Yeah, that arrival experience is legendary because it instantly disorients you. But in the best possible way, you know.
Totally.
Because geographically speaking, you are standing in the middle of nowhere. You are 1,400 kilometers west of Lisbon.
Wow.
Yeah, you have just landed on the absolute closest piece of European landmass to North America. You are fundamentally disconnected from the continent.
And just to set the geographical stage for you, the listener, today's deep dive is strictly focused on São Miguel.
Right, the main island.
Exactly. It's the largest island in the Azores archipelago, but largest is, well, it's a relative term here.
Very relative.
The entire island is only about 65 kilometers long and maybe 16 kilometers wide at its thickest point.
It's tiny when you really think about it.
Right. But it holds over half of the entire region's 240,000 residents.
Which is why
it is. But what you realize the second you step off that plane is that everything here, the culture, the roads, the food, it's all dictated by the geology. You are literally standing on three highly active volcanic complexes.
Which actually brings us to the real mission of our analysis today.
Let's get into it.
We have gathered a mountain of source data, recent logistical reports, and raw economic figures for 2026.
So much data.
Right. And our goal is to strip away all the glossy, highly edited tourism board spin. We are going to look exclusively at the hard, unvarnished logistical reality of visiting Europe's ultimate volcanic outpost right now.
Because listening to that physical description, the sulfur, the deep mid-Atlantic isolation, the crater lakes, it genuinely sounds like we're talking about an undiscovered Jurassic Park.
Oh, completely.
Like some secret sanctuary at the edge of the map. But when I was reading through the raw data we compiled for this deep dive, that illusion shatters pretty quickly. The secret is officially, irreversibly out.
The data leaves absolutely no ambiguity there. If you track the developmental arc of São Miguel over the last decade, there was a very specific golden era.
When was that?
Roughly from 2018 to about 2022. During that window, it legitimately held that coveted undiscovered gem status.
Ah, the glory days.
Exactly. You could hike up to the rim of a caldera at noon and have the entire vista entirely to yourself.
Wow.
But in a remarkably short span of under 24 months, the metrics show an aggressive, formal transition into what the industry calls an active growth destination.
And that transition is exactly why we are analyzing this right now. We are looking at an island that built its identity on isolation, suddenly trying to manage a massive, unprecedented influx of human beings.
It's a huge logistical strain.
And the catalyst for this, the real 2026 tipping point, comes down to a revolution in flight accessibility and a brand new local tax regime. Let's start with the tax.
Yeah, the tax is actually the most concrete indicator of where São Miguel sits economically, so it's the perfect place to start. On January 1st, 2025, the island introduced its first ever tourist tax.
Okay, what are the numbers?
The structure is quite modest on paper. It's €2 per person per night, but they capped it at 3 consecutive nights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the absolute maximum you will pay in tourist tax is €6 per person for your entire trip.
Wait, €6 total?
Total. And if you happen to be camping, they drop it to €1 per night. And naturally, Azorean residents are entirely exempt.
Okay, I have to pause on that number. €6. In the grand scheme of European travel taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what Venice is doing with day tripper fees or the lodging taxes in Amsterdam.
Right, those are huge.
Yeah, €6 feels almost negligible. It's literally the price of 2 coffees in a European capital.
On an individual basis, it is practically invisible to your budget.
Right.
But here is where the macroeconomic reality sets in.
Let's hear it.
By the end of March 2026, across the 6 municipalities that make up São Miguel, that tiny capped tax had generated over 3 million euros in combined revenue.
Wait, let me run that math. If the absolute maximum anyone can pay is 6 euros, generating over 3 million in a matter of months.
Yeah.
You know, the sheer volume of international visitors required to hit that number from a flat, capped fee is astronomical.
The mathematics absolutely prove the unprecedented scale of the footfall. You don't generate millions from a 6 euro cap without hundreds of thousands of people moving through a piece of land that is, again, only 65 kilometers long.
That is mind-blowing.
It is no longer a quiet Atlantic outpost. It is a major processing hub for international tourism.
And the engine driving all those bodies to the island is the flight access. 10 years ago, getting to the Azores from North America was a niche, complicated, often multi-stop endeavor.
It is a headache.
Now, we're looking at a sheer flood of direct flights. You've got routes operating out of New York, JFK, Boston, and Newark.
Direct access from the East Coast is a game changer.
And it's not just one obscure carrier. Azores Airlines, Tech Air Portugal, and United Airlines are all fiercely competing on these routes.
And that fierce competition has created a flight pricing environment that is the single biggest variable making São Miguel relevant to the 2026 traveler.
How volatile are the prices?
Oh, the price swings between seasons are some of the most dramatic and volatile we see anywhere in global aviation. In the low season, say February, you can secure a round-trip ticket from the U.S. East Coast starting at $202.
$202.
Yep.
I was looking at domestic train fares the other day, and you can barely get a regional ticket a few towns over for that price. The fact that you can cross the Atlantic Ocean to Europe for under $250 is mind-bending.
It represents the absolute cheapest transatlantic airfare currently available from the U.S. to Europe, without exception.
Wow.
But the airlines are fully aware of the island's seasonal demand curve. Watch what happens to that exact same metal tube flying that exact same route in the summer.
I'm bracing myself.
By June and July, those $200 round trips from the U.S. instantly jump to anywhere between $863 and $977.
Wow. They know they have a captive audience in the summer.
Exactly.
And how does the access look from mainland Europe?
From Europe, it is incredibly integrated. A direct flight from Lisbon to Ponta Delgada takes about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
That's nothing.
Right, and the pricing is exceptionally aggressive, usually between 45 and 75 euros one way. You can reach a volcanic archipelago in the middle of the ocean for less than the cost of a commuter train into London.
That's actually incredible. What if you're coming from the UK?
If you are flying out of London, you do need to connect through Lisbon, which makes it a 5 to 7 hour total journey, but the pricing remains highly competitive.
So we have this perfect storm of logistics. Direct, ultra-cheap access from the US on one side, budget access from mainland Europe on the other.
Exactly.
But I want to push back on something we discussed a moment ago.
Right.
Let's look at that 6 euro tax again.
Sure.
If you have a traveler who is perfectly willing to drop nearly $1,000 on a peak summer flight from Boston, is a 6 euro maximum tax really going to do anything whatsoever to manage over-tourism? Or is this just a symbolic band-aid for the local municipalities to sweep up some easy infrastructure cash?
It's a very fair critique. The data indicates it is primarily an infrastructure revenue generation tool, not a behavioral deterrent.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A 6 euro tax will never deter a traveler who is already committed to an $800 flight and 150 euro a night hotel rooms.
Right. That's a drop in the bucket.
What it does, practically speaking, is provide the local government with a 3 million euro slush fund to repair the very roads, hiking trails, and public restroom facilities that this new volume of tourists is actively degrading.
I see.
It is a necessary coping mechanism, but it is certainly not a solution to the volume itself.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
They aren't trying to build a wall. They're just trying to pave the roads leading to it.
That's a good way to put it.
So getting there is cheaper than ever, depending on the month. Which leads us to the single biggest variable that will make or break your entire Azorean experience. The calendar and the mechanics of the clouds.
Because if the flight prices dictate the seasons you can afford, the microclimates dictate your daily survival on the ground. We really have to break down what you actually get for your money month by month.
Right, let's establish the baseline reality first.
Yeah.
The climate here is subtropical oceanic. It is mild year-round, and it is wet year-round.
Yes.
When reading the sources, it became clear that people make a catastrophic error in their initial planning. They look at a map, they see an island owned by Portugal, and they pack their bags like they're heading to the Mediterranean Algarve.
Which is the absolute fastest route to a deeply frustrating trip.
Tell me about it.
The Algarve is defined by dry, baking continental heat. São Miguel is defined by the fact that it sits completely exposed in the middle of Atlantic weather systems. Rain is a distinct, likely possibility in any month of the year.
So true.
Let's walk through how the calendar actually feels.
Let's start with the low season, January and February. The temperatures hover between 14 and 17 degrees Celsius. It's decidedly chilly, it's wet, and the ocean swell can be incredibly rough.
But this is the exact window where you see those $200 flights from the U.S. Accommodation is at its absolute lowest price of the year.
That's the trade-off.
Right. And what is fascinating about the Azores is that the island doesn't shut down. Even in the dead of winter, the geothermal hot springs are running hot and the whale-watching boats are still operating.
Wait, really? The whales are still there in winter?
Actually, yes. Sperm whales are resident in these waters. They don't migrate away at all. The deep underwater canyons around the island provide a year-round food source.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
So winter is actually an incredibly reliable time to see one of the ocean's apex predators. If you own a high-quality rain jacket and you want the absolute best value access to Europe, January and February are the smart contrarian play.
That is a great tip. Then we move into the transition months, March and April. The weather starts to lift slightly. You begin to see spring wildflowers plopping up across the black volcanic rock.
It's a really pretty time to be there.
And crucially, this is when the baleen whales, specifically the blue whales and the fin whales, begin their massive migration routes right past the island.
It's a spectacular time for wildlife. Accommodation prices start to tick up modestly here, but it remains an exceptional shoulder season for hikers and nature enthusiasts. The blue whale migration usually hits its peak in April.
Which naturally leads us into what all the source data identifies as the absolute optimal window, May and June.
Unquestionably the best balance of variables.
So what are we looking at for weather?
The temperatures stabilize beautifully between 18 and 22 degrees. You hit the lowest historical rainfall averages of the year.
That sounds perfect.
It is. The crowds are certainly noticeable. You won't be alone, but you aren't fighting for breathing room at the viewpoints yet. Accommodation is sitting roughly 25 to 35% below the peak summer pricing.
A great sweet spot.
And you get this perfect overlap of the peak whale migration lingering, while the island's famous hydrangea blooms begin to open along the roadsides. Furthermore, the major dirt roads leading to the interior trails are dry and fully accessible.
But then we hit the wall. July and August, the peak strain.
This is where the island physically groans under the weight of its own popularity. Temperatures peak between 23 and 26 degrees.
Okay, so it's not boiling hot.
Right. It is quite warm, though crucially, because of the ocean breeze, it is rarely blistering hot like southern Europe. But the visitor volume is immense. Hotel occupancy in the capital, Ponta Delgada, routinely runs above 90%.
And this is exactly when you are forced to pay those maximum $867 to $977 flight prices from the U.S.
Yeah, the budget takes a huge hit.
That same hotel room that cost you 75 euros back in May is suddenly commanding 130 to 170 euros a night.
The infrastructure gets overwhelmed. The scenic viewpoints are packed with rental cars. The whale-watching boats are completely sold out weeks in advance.
Yikes.
The logistical reality for the 2026 traveler is that if you intend to visit in July or August, you must have your accommodation and your major tour operators booked by February at the absolute latest. You cannot improvise a summer trip to São Miguel anymore. The inventory simply does not exist.
There is one massive visual payoff to braving the summer crowds, though, and that's the hydrangeas.
Oh, they are stunning.
The early settlers actually used these massive bushes as agricultural field boundaries instead of fences, and in July, they just erupt. The island is basically painted blue and purple. The data makes it clear it is genuinely extraordinary to witness, but you are paying top dollar and fighting serious crowds for the privilege.
Which is precisely why the smart, value-driven money pivots to September and October. This represents the second best window of the year.
How's the weather then?
The temperatures hold remarkably steady between 20 and 24 degrees well into October. Furthermore, the surrounding ocean has had all summer to absorb the sun, so the water is actually at its most comfortable temperature for swimming.
It's a massive bonus.
And the moment the first week of September concludes and the European schools go back into session, the crowds drop off a cliff.
Finally, we hit November and December. The rain really intensifies here, and temperatures drop back to that 16 to 19 degree range.
It's definitely wetter.
But the sources highlight a very specific, vibrant cultural event. The New Year's Eve fireworks display in Ponta Delgada's harbor on December 31st, which draws people from all over the archipelago.
It's quite a party. Now, setting the months aside entirely, we have to talk about the daily reality of the weather, which introduces a major logistical trap. The data calls it the microclimate trap, and understanding this is the most crucial daily survival mechanism you can possess on this island.
I am fascinated by the science behind this. The source material notes that the island's topography, specifically the mountain peaks like Pico de Var in the east and the massive Caldeira rim of Sete Cidades in the west, physically interact with the weather.
It's a phenomenon called orographic lift.
How does that work?
When these dense, wet weather systems roll in off the flat Atlantic, they hit these steep volcanic slopes. The air is forced violently upward, it cools rapidly, and it immediately dumps all its moisture as rain on one side of the mountain.
Okay, I follow.
By the time that air mass crosses the peak and descends on the other side, it's dry. This creates entirely distinct, isolated weather zones on an island that is only 65 kilometers long.
That is wild.
It can be absolutely pouring miserable rain at a viewpoint in the east, and literally 3 kilometers away on the western slope of the same valley, you have unbroken, glorious sunshine.
Let me make sure I understand the practical application of this. If I wake up in my hotel, pull out my phone, and the standard weather app says rain in Ponta Delgada, does that mean my whole day is ruined?
It means absolutely nothing for the rest of the island. In fact, relying on a standard smartphone weather app here is actively misleading. The data explicitly states that local Azorians check 6 to 8 different micro-forecasts per day.
6 to 8 times.
Wow. If you arrive on São Miguel and commit to a rigid, pre-planned daily itinerary saying, it's Tuesday, so we are doing the Western Lakes no matter what, you are walking straight into a trap.
You know what it feels like? Trying to treat the weather forecast here like gospel is basically like buying a lottery ticket based on yesterday's winning numbers. It's totally useless. So how does a visitor actually manage this chaos on the ground?
The only way to win is to wake up and instantly pivot.
What's the secret?
The specific tactical hack provided in the data revolves around a local website called spotazores.com. It is an incredibly robust live webcam network that points high-definition cameras directly at every major viewpoint and beach across the island.
Oh, that is so smart.
Your morning routine has to become ritualistic. You wake up, you make your coffee, and before you put your shoes on, you pull up the webcams. If the camera pointing at Cidades in the west shows a solid wall of white fog, but the camera over in Furnas in the east shows bright blue skies, you immediately abandon your western plans, get in your car, and drive east. Flexibility is not a luxury on this island. It is the fundamental requirement for a successful trip.
That is such a vital piece of intelligence. You cannot force your will on this island's weather. So you've picked your month, you've checked your morning webcams, and you are ready to pivot. But if the weather dictates that you have to constantly move from one side of the island to the other, that immediately brings up the biggest logistical hurdle.
Right, transportation.
How do you actually get around, and where do you set up your base camp?
Let's start with the immediate arrival mechanics. You grab your bags at João Paulo II Airport. To get into central Ponta Delgada, a standard taxi will cost you between 10 and 15 euros, and the drive takes a brisk 8 to 12 minutes.
Super easy. Is there a bus?
There is also a dedicated airport shuttle bus that runs for 5 euros, but here is the critical takeaway. For 90% of international visitors, simply taking a taxi to a hotel and hoping to figure out transit later is a massive mistake.
Because the absolute non-negotiable necessity on this island is renting your own car.
We call it the mobility imperative. The best, most transformative experiences on São Miguel are distributed wildly across 65 kilometers of rugged coastal cliffs, hidden waterfalls, and interior volcanic terrain.
You can't just take public transit.
The public bus network is designed for local commuters, not for reaching remote trailheads. It is wholly inadequate for a tourism itinerary. you must pick up a rental car directly at the airport.
Good to know. What companies are there?
You will find all the major global operators there. Hertz, Avis, Europcar operating right alongside established local Azorean agencies like Atlantis and Il Verde.
Let's look closely at the budget for that mobility. In the low season, you are looking at a very reasonable 25 to 35 euros a day for a standard compact car. But in the high season, that exact same vehicle spikes to 55 to 80 euros a day. And if you are looking to rent an electric vehicle, which are becoming more common, expect to pay a premium of 65 to 100 euros a day.
The base rates are straightforward enough, but here is where we hit one of the most punishing elements of Azorean travel. It's a logistical nightmare that has ruined countless travel budgets.
Looking through the source material, the details on this insurance trap are brutal.
I was trying to think of a comparison, and it's basically like, imagine buying a super cheap concert ticket online, getting all the way to the venue doors, and the bouncer tells you the listening fee is an extra $100.
Exactly.
How exactly does the rental car industry get you here?
It comes down to a standard rental practice on the Portuguese mainland that has been aggressively adopted by the operators on the islands. When you are sitting at home in New York or London booking a car online, the base rate you see, say, that attractive 35 euros a day, almost always excludes CDW.
Which is the collision damage waiver. Right, as well as theft protection, so it looks incredibly competitive on the screen. But the moment you arrive exhausted at the counter, the agent pitches you the mandatory fueling add-on insurance.
And how much does that add-on actually cost at the desk?
Usually between 15 and 30 euros extra per day.
Wait, per day?
Meaning your carefully calculated total rental cost just unexpectedly jumped by 40 to 60% at the counter.
And what happens if you try to call their bluff? If you just say, no thanks, I'm a great driver, I'll risk it.
If you decline their CDW, they will immediately place a 2,000 to 3,000 euro damage deposit hold on your credit card.
3,000 euros, just locked up.
Yes, and remember the environment you are about to enter. You are driving a rental car on incredibly narrow, wet, volcanic stone roads, often bordered by low, jagged rock walls.
Right.
If you return that car at the end of the week with even a tiny, barely visible scuff on the wheel arch from brushing a stone wall, they will seamlessly deduct 400 euros from your deposit to repair it. Oh, that is so stressful. But doesn't my credit card cover that?
Travelers assume their premium credit cards will cover it, but many standard personal travel insurance policies and credit card protections contain hidden, small print exclusions specifically for Portuguese island territories.
That is terrifying. So if you don't secure this properly before you land, your entire vacation budget is instantly blown on day one. What is the actual actionable fix for this?
There are two ironclad options. Option 1. Deliberately seek out and book through an operator that explicitly include zero deductible CDW in their upfront price. Local agencies like Atlantis often structure their pricing this way. It looks more expensive online, but it's the true final price.
Okay, what's option 2?
Option 2, which is often the most economical. Purchase a standalone, third-party rental car excess insurance policy before you leave your home country.
Oh, from where? Providers like iCar Hate Your Insurance or Rental Cover offer comprehensive policies for approximately 50 to 80 euros for an entire week of coverage. That is 50 to 70% cheaper than buying the equivalent protection at the rental counter, and the coverage limits are usually much higher.
That is a massive saving.
The golden rule is this: never, ever pull off the airport rental lot without confirmed ironclad CDW in place.
That is essential advice. All right, so let's assume you've navigated the counter, you have your fully insured car, and you drive away from the airport. Where are you actually setting up your base camp to deal with these shifting microclimates?
Well, the island geographically divides quite cleanly into 4 distinct accommodation zones.
Let's break them down.
Zone 1 is Ponta Delgada, the capital city on the southern coast. This is the most logical, frictionless base for first-time visitors. You have high-density, walking-distance restaurants, a major harbor, and the whale-watching departure points are right on your doorstep.
And what's the housing like there?
The accommodation spectrum here is the widest on the island, covering everything from budget backpacker hostels to premium 5-star hotels.
The pricing data in Zone 1 gives us a great baseline. If you are looking at off-peak backpacker dorms, places like the Ada Blue Hostel or the local youth hostel generally run between 22 to 35 euros a night.
Very affordable.
But the moment summer hits, you have to mentally adjust that baseline up to about 45.
Makes sense.
Budget private guest houses like MS Villanova or the Rosario or even Hotel San Francisco run 35 to 75 euros.
Okay.
Moving up to mid-range comfort, properties like the Vine Hotel will cost you between 90 and 140 euros, or Marina Atlantico is about 80 to 130 euros.
Right.
And the premier five-star property, the Azor Hotel, runs 110 to 170 euros, depending on the view and the season.
It offers the most robust urban infrastructure. However, the distinct downside of basing yourself in Zone 1 is geography. Because it sits on the southern edge, you are committing to driving 25 to 45 minutes each way every single day to reach the major natural attractions in the east or west, which naturally leads people to consider Zone 2, Furnas.
Furnace, the geothermal heart of the island's interior. This is the valley where the earth is so thin that it literally vents thick plumes of volcanic steam right into the village streets.
It is intensely atmospheric. If your priority is soaking in thermal springs and exploring the lush, jungle-like eastern side of the island, this is your base. But the market knows this, so average prices are noticeably higher here.
What kind of numbers are we talking?
The iconic mid-range option is the Terra Nostra Garden Hotel, which runs 145 to 220 euros a night. The true luxury option in the valley, the Furnace Boutique Hotel, runs 220 to 380 euros. You are paying a strict premium for the location and the geothermal access.
Then we swing all the way to the west for Zone 3, Cidades. This is the rural, iconic western region defined by the massive volcanic crater that holds the famous Twin Lakes, one blue, one green.
This zone is defined by incredibly high aesthetic demand, but extremely low accommodation supply. It is a protected area, so development is restricted.
So it's hard to find a room.
Yes. If your dream is to wake up, open your window, and look directly down into the Caldeira, you are going to pay for the privilege of scarcity. Expect prices to start at a hard floor of 120 euros a night and scale rapidly up from there. It is designed for travelers who prioritize landscape and isolation over urban amenities and dining choices.
And finally, Zone 4, Ribeira Grande and the North Coast.
According to the source material, this side of the island holds on to a much more traditional, surfing-friendly, slower Portuguese rhythm.
It is arguably the best zone for longer multi-week stays. The ocean swell makes it a surfing hub. You have fantastic mid-range hotels like the Verde Mar and Spa running 110 to 170 euros.
Oh, that sounds nice. What about for groups? If you are traveling as a group, family villas and multi-room apartments here run 100 to 200 euros a night, which offers great value. There is also large-scale resort accommodation like the Pestana Bahia Praia, available at 130 to 210 euros.
And luxury options.
Crucially, the North Coast is where a significant portion of the island's luxury tier is concentrated. You have properties like the White Exclusive Suites running 350 to 600 euros a night, and the highly acclaimed Magma Hotel running 400 to 700 euros.
I really want to look closely at that luxury ceiling for a second. 700 euros a night is an undeniable amount of money.
Yeah.
But when you contextualize it against the global luxury travel market, something really interesting emerges.
That is a vital point for perspective. São Miguel does not operate with Amalfi Coast, Mykonos, or Capri pricing logic.
Right.
The absolute pinnacle of luxury here remains highly competitive on a global scale. The real comparison point is Iceland.
Ah, Iceland.
If you look at equivalent design-forward luxury wilderness stays in Iceland or even the Scottish Highlands, you are frequently paying 40 to 60% more than you are for the absolute best room in the Azores. Because of the local economy and different building material costs, the value for quality ratio at the extreme high end of the Azorean market is phenomenal.
Okay, so let's take stock. We are fully insured against scratch paint, we are checked into our strategically chosen hotel zone, and we have our rental car. Now we get to dig into the actual sensory experience of the island.
The fun stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
How do we spend our days? The sources highlight two major pillars, the food and the geothermal waters. And I want to start with the food, because the connection between the raw geology and the culinary culture here is just wildly unique.
It is a profound connection. The foundational identity of the food is undeniably Portuguese, heavy on garlic, olive oil, and wine, but the execution is purely Azorean. The entire culinary scene rests on three distinct pillars: the volcanic heat of the earth, the incredible depth of the Atlantic seafood, and a centuries-old tradition of dairy and beef farming on lush volcanic pastures.
The absolute standout dish, the thing that every single source says you have to experience, is the Cozido das Furnas.
It is the ultimate signature dish of the island. Conceptually, it is a massive, hearty, rustic stew. It contains huge cuts of beef, pork, chicken, blood sausage, chorizo, layered with heavy cabbage, carrots, standard potatoes, and sweet potatoes.
Sounds amazing.
But the magic is in the execution. It is not cooked in a conventional kitchen oven. At the crack of dawn, chefs layer all these raw ingredients into a massive metal pot, wrap the pot in cloth, haul it out to the furnace geothermal field, and bury it directly in the bubbling, steaming volcanic earth.
The imagery of that is incredible.
Yeah.
To just let the ambient volcanic heat slow braise this massive pot underground for 5 to 6 hours. You aren't just eating a traditional stew. You are eating the direct thermodynamic byproduct of an active volcanic caldera. The earth itself is the oven. What does an experience like that actually cost?
Remarkably little for the novelty of it. At an established local spot like Tony's Restaurant or the dining room at the Ristorante Terra Nostra in Furnas, a massive sharing-sized portion will run you between 18 and 25 euros.
That's so cheap.
And the slow, pressurized underground braising creates a texture in the meat that is impossibly tender, and because it cooks in the volcanic steam, it takes on this incredibly faint, earthy, mineral smoke flavor profile that simply cannot be replicated in a commercial kitchen in Paris or London.
Moving from the earth to the ocean, the signature seafood experience seems to revolve around limpets, known locally as lapis grilladas.
Yes, limpets are small, resilient shellfish that cling tightly to the black volcanic rocks right in the crash zone of the waves. Harvesters scrape them directly off the shoreline.
How are they served?
They are served sizzling in a heavy cast iron pan, drenched in butter, aggressive amounts of garlic, and a squeeze of local lemon. It is a highly authentic, slightly chewy, deeply savory island experience with almost no direct equivalent on the European mainland. A half dozen of these in a standard Ponta Delgada restaurant will cost between 7 and 12 euros.
And then we get to the fruit, which is perhaps the most surprising part of the agriculture.
Yeah.
The pineapples. The Azores grow this incredibly intense, small greenhouse variety of pineapple right on the cool north coast.
It seems counterintuitive to grow tropical fruit in a cool, misty mid-Atlantic climate, right?
Totally.
But they utilize a fascinating century-old greenhouse technology. They actually fill the greenhouses with smoke at specific times to trick the plants into flowering simultaneously.
Huh.
You can tour these historic facilities like the Augusta Ruta plantation for an entry fee of just 3 euros.
Just 3 euros for a tour.
Yeah, and if you want to buy the fruit itself, it costs 4 to 6 euros.
6 euros is undeniably expensive for a single pineapple. But when you understand the sheer labor intensity of cultivating them in a smoked greenhouse for 2 years, and you taste the hyper-concentrated acidity and sweetness compared to a watery imported pineapple, the price makes total sense.
It's a premium product.
Let's aggregate some standard dining costs into general rules of thumb so people know what to budget for daily life.
Sure. A standard mid-range sit-down dinner for 2 people, perhaps sharing an appetizer and having main courses, will run between 45 and 70 euros total.
Okay, what about lunch?
A casual hearty lunch is usually 15 to 22 euros per person. If you just want to pop into a cafe for a traditional Portuguese pastel de nata and a strong espresso, that will only set you back 2 to 3 euros.
Oh, I would be eating those every day. What about more seafood?
For seafood mains, a massive cut of fresh Atlantic tuna steak is typically 14 to 22 euros, and a rich traditional octopus rice dish is 15 to 20 euros.
The alcohol pricing is also incredibly favorable. A glass of local Azorean wine, either from São Miguel itself or the nearby island of Pico, which grows vines and volcanic ash, is just 4 to 7 euros in a nice restaurant.
That's a steal.
If you buy a bottle at the market, it's 8 to 18 euros. A standard cold Portuguese draft beer like a Superbock or a Sagres is universally 2 to 3 euros.
And if you are looking for specific, highly rated establishments, the data highlights a few. Atasca in Ponta Delgada is legendary for modern Azorean tapas, running about 35 to 50 euros a person.
Nice.
Alabote on the north coast is prime for refined fish dishes at 40 to 60 euros. Case 20 is the chaotic, authentic spot for huge platters of traditional grilled fish at 25 to 35 euros. And if you want to push the boat out for that Michelin star tasting menu experience, Magma will cost you 120 to 200 euros per person.
So the culinary spectrum is vast. But after you eat, particularly if you've been hiking in the damp fog, you are inevitably going to want to visit the hot springs. And this introduces a major hurdle. The data identifies this as logistics trap number 2, the hot springs trap.
This trap is purely born of visitor ignorance and poor naming conventions. The massive misconception is that international visitors hear the word furnas and assume it refers to one single, giant, communal hot spring that everyone goes to. It absolutely does not.
Oh, so it's not just one place.
No. The geothermal water is captured by multiple distinct, privately managed facilities, each with completely different aesthetics, rules, and crucially, entry mechanics.
Okay, let's break down the big 3 so nobody gets caught out.
First, you have Parque Terra Nostra. The entry fee here is €20. This is not a wild spring. It is an immaculately manicured 150-year-old botanical garden estate that features an enormous historic thermal pool.
Wow, €20 seems steep compared to everything else.
It is, but it's a huge estate. The water is intensely iron-rich, meaning it is literally the opaque brown color of strong tea. It will permanently stain a light-colored swimsuit.
Oh, good tip.
Yeah, don't wear white. It is a formal, daytime, historic experience.
Right next door, you have a totally different vibe at Poça de Dona, Beija.
Exactly. Entry here is €8. This is a series of smaller, cascading outdoor pools built directly alongside a flowing stream in Furnace Village.
Okay, sounds very natural.
It is, but the critical logistical detail here is their operating hours. They remain open until 11 p.m.
Oh, nice.
So while Terra Nostra is the grand daytime experience, Dona Beija is the absolute best option for a moody, romantic evening soak beneath the stars after the daytime tour bus crowds have completely evacuated the valley.
And then there's the third major site, Caldeira, Velha, located up on the mountain road toward Lagoa do Fogo. This seems to be where people really mess up their itineraries.
It is. Entry here is also €8, and aesthetically it is stunning. It is a natural, warm, volcanic waterfall cascading into a pool set deep in a prehistoric-looking fern forest.
Sounds like a movie set.
It really does. But they operate on a ruthless, strictly enforced, timed entry system to protect the ecosystem. In the summer months, those 90-minute time slots book out days, sometimes a week in advance.
Oh, wow. So you can't just drop in.
No, and that's the trap. It's driving up that winding mountain road at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday in July without a reservation, walking up to the gate, being told every single slot is sold out for the next 48 hours, and having to drive away entirely empty-handed. You must book Caldeira Velha through their official regional portal while you are still sitting at home planning the trip.
That is a vital trip-saving warning. Do not treat Caldeira Velha like a spontaneous roadside stop. So balancing out the entire physical experience of the island, what does the data point to as the absolute undeniable highlights? What are the honest, frustrating disappointments?
The pinnacle highlight, without question, is the Vista du Rey viewpoint looking out over the Cidades caldera.
The one with the blue and green lakes.
Exactly. And specifically, doing it at 8 a.m., it is completely free. Standing on the rim of a dormant volcano, looking down at one vibrant green lake and one deep blue lake as the morning fog rolls off the water, long before the first tour bus engine is even turned on. It is universally regarded as one of the greatest vistas in all of Europe.
Another massive highlight the data supports is the offshore wildlife.
Yes, the cetacean encounters. Booking a trip with a reputable marine biologist-led operator like Terra Azul out of Vila Franca do Campo is extraordinary. It costs €55 to €70, and because of the deep ocean topography during the peak spring migration, they hit a staggering 90% plus sighting rate of wild, deep Atlantic whales and dolphins. It is world-class.
But the disappointments are equally real, and they often involve those exact same locations just at the wrong time of day.
Precisely. If you go to that exact same Vista du Rey viewpoint at 12:30 p.m. in mid-August, the spiritual tranquility is completely destroyed by a literal wall of idling diesel tour buses and hundreds of people fighting for selfie space.
Ugh, that sounds awful.
Similarly, if you book a standard whale-watching boat in peak August, the sheer volume of competing tourist vessels swarming around a single animal severely diminishes the magic and ethics of the experience.
There's also an interesting cultural disappointment noted in the sources regarding the capital city.
Yes, visitors need to actively manage their architectural and cultural expectations regarding Ponta Delgada. It is a deeply pleasant, historic colonial town with beautiful cobbled streets, but it does not possess the towering cultural depth, the endless museum networks, or the vibrant cosmopolitan nightlife of mainland cities like Porto or Lisbon. It is a staging ground for nature, not a metropolitan destination in itself.
And before we leave the city, There was one highly specific tourist scam to flag.
The seafood scam.
Yes, if you walk along the main harborside avenue, Avenida Infante Dom Henrique, the seafood restaurants lined up facing the water deliberately mark up their menus by 30 to 50% simply because you're paying for the view of the marina.
It's such a classic tourist trap.
The data is unequivocal. Turn your back to the water, walk exactly 2 narrow streets inland into the actual town, and you'll get the exact same quality of fresh Atlantic fish, cooked better for a fraction of the cost.
Which perfectly transitions us into the economics of the whole trip. We have covered the cost of individual rental cars, single meals, and hot spring entries. But how does this all aggregate into a realistic budget? We need to look at the daily balance sheet and give the listener the hard mathematical reality for their specific travel style.
Let's start at the budget end with the backpacker. The aggregated daily budget here comes in between 70 and 118 euros a day.
But that specific number comes with a massive structural condition attached to it. That 70 to 118 euro budget assumes you are traveling in the off-peak or shoulder season, sleeping in a 25 euro hostel dorm, cooking some of your own meals, and critically, sharing the cost of a rental car and fuel with at least one other person.
The transport penalty. If you are a purely solo backpacker who cannot find someone at the hostel to split a car with, your budget gets destroyed.
Exactly. If you are solo and you are forced to rely on limited taxis or absorb the entire cost of a daily single-driver rental car, your minimum daily budget instantly spikes to 95 to 150 euros a day.
That's a huge difference.
It is. São Miguel is an excellent backpacker destination in terms of natural access, but the transport economics are aggressively punishing for a pure solo traveler on a shoestring budget.
Next up is the mid-range couple.
This demographic represents the ultimate sweet spot for São Miguel. You are looking at a combined spend of 222 to 404 euros a day for 2 people, or 111 to 202 euros per person.
Let's translate that math into an actual lifestyle. What does 300-ish a day combined buy a couple on this island?
It buys an incredibly comfortable, frictionless vacation. It covers a beautiful 4-star hotel room in Ponta Delgada or Ribeira Grande, your fully insured shared rental car, sitting down for full restaurant dining for both lunch and dinner, and amortized activity costs, allowing you to do a whale watching tour, visit a hot spring, and perhaps do a guided kayaking trip over the course of a week.
So for a full 7-day week, a mid-range couple is looking at a total ground spend of roughly 1,550 to 2,820 euros.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger macroeconomic picture of global tourism, this is where the genius of the Azores reveals itself. Take that exact same itinerary, the 4-star room, the rental car, the hot springs, the volcanic dining, and try to execute it in Iceland.
Oh, I can only imagine.
That exact same week in Iceland currently runs a mid-range couple between 2,800 and 4,500 euros. You are saving thousands of euros for a parallel geological experience.
Wow.
This massive, undeniable price arbitrage is precisely why São Miguel's capturing so much market share from traditional Nordic destinations right now.
Then we scale up to the luxury tier, which sits between 450 and 870 euros per person per day.
This covers the absolute pinnacle of the island's offerings. We are talking 5-star cliffside villas, upgraded electric or premium SUV rentals, multiple Michelin-starred dining experiences at places like Magma, chartering private Zodiacs for whale tours instead of taking the group boats, and securing private access to certain thermal pools.
Living the dream.
It is undeniably expensive, but again, you are receiving world-class, nature-immersive luxury for a price that would barely cover a standard sea view room during peak season in Capri or Mykonos.
And finally, a really interesting demographic that the 2026 data specifically highlights: the digital nomad or long-term remote worker.
The monthly economics here make an incredible amount of sense for a remote worker. You can lease a modern, fully furnished 1-bedroom apartment in Ponta Delgada for between 700 and 1,100 euros a month.
That is extremely reasonable for Europe.
A dedicated desk at a major co-working space like Nona costs 120 to 200 euros a month. Factor in groceries, utilities, and weekend dining, and your total monthly living cost is highly manageable at 1,500 to 2,400 euros. Furthermore, the fiber internet infrastructure in Ponta Delgada is famously excellent, specifically built to attract this demographic.
But there is one major caveat for the long-term stay, and it goes back to mobility.
Yes. Renting a car at standard daily tourist rates for an entire month is economic suicide. It will double your budget overnight.
So what's the workaround?
If you are staying for a month, you must secure a long-term local lease through an agency, or, frankly, learn to ride a scooter to access the beaches and trails on the weekends.
Let's talk about the daily logistics of feeding yourself on those longer stays. What does the grocery scene actually look like?
The island is served by several large modern supermarket chains like Continente Modelo, Solmar, and Mi Super. The pricing on local staples is incredibly favorable. A liter of fresh Azorean milk is usually around 85 cents to $1.10. A large loaf of traditional Portuguese bread is €1, 20 to €2.
And what about cheese? I know they have great cheese.
Incredible local cheeses run €4 to €8 for a substantial block. And the real steal is the fish counters. You can buy whole, fresh Atlantic fish to cook at home for 12 to €22 a kilo. If you have an apartment and cook your own meals, you can eat exceptionally well for a baseline grocery cost of just 8 to €14 a day.
But when you do venture out to dine, particularly as a remote worker or long-term visitor trying to blend in, you need to deeply understand the cultural etiquette of the island, particularly regarding the local philosophy of time.
This is a major friction point for North American tourists. The lunch rhythm in the Azores is a non-negotiable cultural pillar. Trying to rush a waiter through a Portuguese lunch service because you have a hike planned is offensive. It's a fundamental cultural difference in how time is valued.
It's basically like trying to fast forward a sunset.
Yeah.
You can't do it, and you miss the point by trying. You just have to lean back and let the event happen at its own pace.
Exactly. Here is the mechanical breakdown of how a restaurant operates. The lunch service opens around 12:30 p.m. The dining room slowly fills up, and service runs at a relaxed pace until about 3 p.m.
And then what?
At 3 p.m., the kitchen completely shuts down. The chefs go home to rest. If you show up hungry at a restaurant at 4:30 p.m. or 5 p.m. expecting a hot meal, you will be met with locked doors or a polite refusal. They will not serve you a full meal again until the dinner service formally opens at 7 p.m. or 7:30 p.m.
Oh, that is crucial to know.
The pace of the actual service is deliberately slow and conversational. The golden rule is, never schedule a sit-down restaurant meal. If you have a tightly timed whale-watching tour departing 45 minutes later, you will miss your boat and you will ruin your meal.
What about the financial etiquette? Tipping culture is always a stress point for travelers.
It is much simpler here. By law, a service charge listed on the receipt as the taxa de serviço is usually included in the base price of the meal. The staff are paid a standardized wage. Leaving an extra 5 to 10% in cash on the table for truly exceptional warm service is always appreciated, but it is absolutely not culturally mandatory or aggressively expected the way it is in the United States.
Okay, we have covered where to sleep, what to eat, and exactly what it costs. Now we need to look at what you have to protect, your physical safety, and the viability of your vacation investment. Let's look at the reality checks, the dangers, and ultimately, our final verdicts.
Let's address the most common international travel anxiety right out of the gate: crime. On São Miguel, violent crime directed at tourists is statistically non-existent.
That's a relief.
Even petty theft and pickpocketing are incredibly low compared to mainland European capitals. It is a geographically isolated, culturally tight-knit island community. People know each other. Because of this, the safety profile for solo female travel is exceptionally high, and families with young children thrive here without constant anxiety.
So what are the real risks?
The dangers on this island are absolutely not human. They are entirely environmental.
The primary danger, the number one cause of ruined trips and serious injuries, according to the data, is the road network.
Without question. The roads themselves are a unique hazard. The local asphalt is often mixed with crushed volcanic rock, which makes it incredibly slick.
Yeah, that doesn't sound safe.
Add the fact that the island's microclimates mean the roads are almost always damp from low-hanging clouds or recent rain, and you have a surface with surprisingly low traction. Furthermore, the mountain roads are narrow, lacking guardrails in places, and full of blind hairpin curves.
And watch out for the cows.
Exactly. It is an entirely normal, daily occurrence to come around a blind bend and find a massive herd of dairy cattle being moved down the middle of the asphalt by a farmer.
The data explicitly shows that foreign tourists driving rental cars, who are unfamiliar with these specific traction physics, are involved in a highly disproportionate percentage of the island's serious accidents. What is the behavioral fix for the driver?
The fix is a total mindset shift. You must consciously drive at 70 to 80% of your normal highway speed. You must absolutely never overtake a slow-moving agricultural vehicle on a blind curve, no matter how frustrated you are. And you must respect the stopping distance required on wet volcanic stone.
The second major environmental danger is the ocean itself.
The Atlantic Ocean is breathtaking, but it is deeply unforgiving. First, it is cold. Even in the absolute peak heat of August, the water temperature maxes out at roughly 22 or 23 degrees Celsius.
That is pretty chilly.
But more critically, the undertows, rip currents, and rogue waves along the volcanic cliffs are incredibly powerful and unpredictable. The rule is simple. Do not attempt to swim at unflagged, wild, isolated beaches.
Where should people go instead?
Stick strictly to the heavily monitored sandy stretches like Praia dos Moinhos or Santa Barbara Beach, or utilize the naturally sheltered, built-up ocean pools at coastal towns like Mosteiros and Calora, where the volcanic rock breaks the wave energy before it reaches you.
And the third environmental danger lies up in the mountains while hiking.
The trail network across the island is beautifully maintained, but the elevation changes introduce severe rapid weather risks. If you are hiking a high peak like Pico de Vara, which sits at 1,103 meters, a perfectly clear, sunny morning can turn into a dense, wet, zero-visibility fog bank in a matter of minutes.
That's terrifying.
Exposure and disorientation are real risks. You must always carry waterproof layers in your day pack, regardless of how the sky looks when you leave the hotel.
And what about hiking with kids?
A note for families. If you are traveling with children under 8 years old, the data strongly suggests skipping the steep, unprotected Caldeira rim hikes, which feature sheer drops, and sticking to the stunning, flat coastal walking path or the shorter waterfall trails in the valleys.
Now, regarding human scams, you mentioned the island is remarkably clean. The only pervasive systemic scam highlighted in our source data is purely financial, and it happens at the payment terminals.
Yes, it is the dynamic currency conversion, or DCC, scam. It is everywhere. When you insert your foreign credit card into a restaurant terminal or an ATM, the screen will inevitably ask you if you want to pay in your home currency, say US dollars or British pounds, or if you want to pay in the local currency, euros.
It seems like a nice convenience.
The machine frames it as a convenience. It is not. If you select your home currency, the terminal applies an abysmal, highly inflated exchange rate, essentially skimming 5 to 7% of the transaction value right off the top.
So the ironclad rule of thumb, always, always, always press the button to pay in euros and let your own bank at home handle the fair market conversion. And regarding cash, sticking to the major, brightly lit bank ATMs like Millennium BCP, Santander, or Novo Banco is perfectly safe.
Exactly. Now, before we hand down the final definitive verdicts for each traveler type, we have to look at the global alternatives, because no travel destination exists in a vacuum. The 2026 traveler is highly sophisticated, and the data shows they are aggressively cross-shopping São Miguel against its two main volcanic rivals.
The first major rival is Madeira. This is Portugal's other famous Atlantic island, sitting about 900 kilometers further south, closer to the coast of Africa.
Madeira is a formidable competitor. Because it is further south, the climate is noticeably warmer and far more reliable, sitting comfortably between 20 and 25 degrees for much of the year.
That's a big draw.
It has a massive, highly developed resort infrastructure, and because it processes such a high volume of British and German package tourists, direct flights from Europe are often even cheaper than to the Azores.
So why choose São Miguel over Madeira?
Because Madeira lacks the raw prehistoric drama. It does not have the massive, swimmable, volcanic crater lakes, and crucially, it does not possess a deep ocean cetacean ecosystem that can rival the Azores for whale watching. If you want reliable sunshine, warm resort pools, and easy logistics, you choose Madeira. But if you want untamed, misty, raw volcanic nature, you choose São Miguel.
And then we have the ultimate heavyweight rival, Iceland.
Iceland dominates the global mindshare for volcanic tourism. It is vastly larger, the geological features are more aggressive and otherworldly, you have access to massive glaciers, and of course, the allure of the northern lights in winter.
But the drawback is the financial and physical pain.
Precisely. Iceland is brutally, punishingly expensive. As we noted, it is 40 to 60% more expensive across almost every metric: food, lodging, car rentals than São Miguel. And the climate is significantly harsher and colder.
I was thinking about how to frame these three against each other. If Iceland is the massive, high-budget, intense blockbuster movie that leaves you exhausted and broke, and Madeira is the safe, warm, highly reliable sitcom that you've seen 100 times, then São Miguel is the brilliant, critically acclaimed indie film.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
It has a lower budget, it takes a bit more effort to understand, but it is incredibly rewarding, and right now it is just starting to sell out the theaters. It is the perfect geographic and financial arbitrage play.
That is the perfect distillation of the market right now, which brings us to the ultimate question of this deep dive. Is it worth it? Let's run through the definitive matrix verdicts based on the 2026 data.
First demographic, the backpacker.
The verdict is a yes, with conditions. São Miguel is absolutely not the cheapest destination in Europe. A hostel in Eastern Europe will beat it on price every time. But the absolute value of the nature you get access to is unparalleled, provided you follow the rules. You must carpool with other travelers to split the massive vehicle costs, you must sleep in dorms, and you must travel strictly in the shoulder seasons to avoid the summer price spikes. If you can manage the transport logistics, the access to raw, unticketed nature is unbeatable.
Second, the mid-range couple.
This is an absolute, unqualified yes. In fact, this is the strongest, most confident, positive verdict we have across any demographic. The sheer value you extract for 200 to 300 euros a day per person, granting you access to pristine four-star hotels, total vehicular mobility, extraordinary slow-cooked volcanic dining, and world-class marine wildlife, is arguably the single best value proposition in Western Europe right now.
Third, the family.
The verdict is yes with conditions. You absolutely must secure a large rental car well in advance. You must deliberately book accommodation that features a heated swimming pool, because the reality is the wild Atlantic Ocean is simply too cold and too rough for small children to enjoy safely.
That's a solid tip.
And parents must arrive with a solid, thoroughly researched list of indoor rainy day backup plans. But the underlying Portuguese cultural warmth and extreme tolerance toward children in restaurants and public spaces is phenomenal.
Fourth, the luxury traveler.
The verdict is yes, but you must set your expectations correctly. You are paying a premium for total volcanic immersion, incredible private architectural design, and profound quiet. You are not paying for the mega yacht density, the aggressive luxury shopping, or the high-octane champagne beach clubs of Ibiza or Capri. It is a much quieter, deeper, more introverted form of luxury.
And finally, the digital nomad or solo traveler.
The verdict is yes, with conditions. The safety profile, particularly for solo female travelers, is absolutely top tier on a global scale. The internet is flawless and the community is welcoming.
But the transportation costs.
Exactly. The economics only mathematically work if you actively solve the long-term transport equation. You must secure a local monthly vehicle lease or commit to a scooter, because paying daily tourist car rental rates for a 30-day stay will completely destroy your living budget.
So if we synthesize this entire journey, we started by uncovering how a $202 flight and a modest €6 tourist tax are funneling unprecedented volume onto a tiny island.
We did.
We learned exactly how to survive the microclimate lottery by checking coastal webcams before we even pour our morning coffee. We outlined the exact strategy to bypass the financially ruinous rental car insurance trap at the airport.
Essential knowledge.
We explored the sensory magic of eating a heavy meat stew cooked for 6 hours by the heat of an active volcano. And we calculated down to the euro exactly what it costs to do all of this correctly in the current market. We have stripped away the glossy PR spin to give you the honest, unvarnished blueprint for 2026.
It is a profound destination currently caught in rapid transition. It requires precise, informed planning and deep flexibility, but it rewards that preparation with immense, unforgettable value.
Which leaves us with one final, broader thought to mull over. As global climate change continues to accelerate, we are watching traditional summer hotspots in southern Europe. Places like mainland Spain, the Italian coast, and the Greek islands become dangerously, unbearably hot during the peak months of July and August.
It's true, the heat is getting extreme.
As those Mediterranean temperatures push past 40 degrees, will cool, breezy, misty mid-Atlantic islands like São Miguel suddenly become the new, highly coveted premium summer sanctuaries for European travelers looking to escape the heat. And if that massive geographical shift happens, if the masses truly flee the Mediterranean baking heat for the cool Atlantic mist, will that tiny €6 tourist tax eventually look like the greatest bargain of the century? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources, and please keep exploring the margins of the map. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.